name is Bruce Green. I'm a retired school teacher. So um, I taught for almost 40 years. Most of my career was here at Diamond School. I had over 20 years there,
Yeah.
and I think 23, 24 years there as a biology and general science teacher. And my background in science, I did a Bachelor of Science degree at UBC, and the my area of interest was zoology and biochemistry. Um, well, as a child, one of the things that influenced me was keeping tropical fish. We had lots of pets too. Our parents didn't mind us having, different pets, and we'd have things like ravens and crows and owls, things like that would end up in our home if they were injured or something, and we'd try and nurse them back to health. But I got interested in tropical fish, and when I was in school, I actually made a little bit of spending money breeding guppies and selling them to the pet store. So I would, sell hundreds of guppies in a year. I think I got 5 cents each, but that was the source of money for me then. Well, when I finished my science degree, I figured I needed a break, and what could I get into that I could start work and maybe get out and work for a year or two, and decide where I want to go with my life and with science. And I thought I'd probably go back into science at some point. So with teaching, because it opened up the world actually, because at the time I started teaching, you could get jobs almost anywhere in the world. So that's what I did. I got a teaching degree, and then went taught my first year in northern BC, where I met my wife, who was from England. So the next step was to go back to England, and I taught there. And then we ended up in the Eastern Arctic for 3 years, and then in Hay River. And in addition to teaching in the regular school system and in high school, I did a number of years in adult education. Well, doing the experiments and kind of hands-on activity in the classroom, that was always a joy. And it was always exciting, because when kids start doing experiments, you have to keep close watch on on things, and sometimes the unexpected happens. And just the enthusiasm of the kids when they start doing experiments. And the other thing I enjoyed a lot too was taking kids out on field trips. Um, so the school is right on the edge of the river there, and there's a lovely nature trail. So I tried to bring as much of that into the program as I could, and getting kids familiar with the plants and animals around the school. Well, I remember thinking, how great it would be, to take kids down to areas where there's dinosaur excavations and things like that going on. And never really did get organized enough to do that. But I was thinking, how amazing it would be, like if there was dinosaur dinosaur bones or dinosaur remains in this area. And of course, I knew about the fossil beds here, and we did try and incorporate some of that into our studies too. But I didn't realize until after I left teaching, after I retired, that we had some of the most amazing uh, fossil remains right here, right on our doorstep. And it was just after I retired, the trackway was discovered. And the trackway here, to me, is more amazing than any dinosaur trackway because, these are the earliest tracks um, anywhere in the world, and they're made by walking fish. Now, what could be more, amazing than that, and more interesting than that? So I've done quite a bit of study on that, and um, did a little bit of writing on it. We put out a little booklet actually just a short time ago, um, explaining a little bit more about the tracks. And I've really become interested in Devonian fossils and collecting those. And another thing that's come up recently is in one of our little field trips that we're doing actually with the library, we were on the river, and there was a geologist with us, and he discovered an interesting rock which he brought to my attention. He said, I think this is a stromatolite, and stromatolites are the earliest fossils that in existence, and it was a little bit of a puzzle to find them here because by the Devonian, the stromatolites were kind of dying out, and yet here occasionally you find them on the riverbank. And I know now that there are important fossil stromatolite beds in the east arm of Great Slave Lake. So whether these have been carried by the ice or some way from that area, or maybe carried downriver from other areas, we have stromatolites around here. So it's a little bit of a mystery as to where they originated. We've never found any Devonian stromatolites, or at least stromatolites embedded in Devonian bedrock, so that we can be sure they're formed during the Devonian time.
Yep.
Well, I think with science, the more hands-on activity you can organize around it, the more exciting it becomes. If it's just out of textbook, that kind of science learning is a little bit superficial. But if you actually get kids thinking scientifically and using kind of the scientific approach to solving problems, I think that's what gets them excited. That's what gets me excited anyway.
Yeah, for sure.
I think a good place to start is a good biography of a famous scientist. I think one person who was really influential to me when I look back on where science has taken me and what I studied was Louis Pasteur, and he was one of the great scientists. And to read about his life and how he thought and how he worked is inspirational. But there's I'd recommend any kind of biography on Louis Pasteur. But there's no end of other ones. This book here is about Alfred Russel Wallace, and he was a contemporary of Darwin. In fact, I think many people, myself included, would think that he actually was ahead of Darwin in his thinking, and I think he was writing to Darwin, and I think his influence on Darwin, I think he shared some of his ideas with Darwin, which helped Darwin kind of complete his thinking about evolution. And Darwin only started writing about evolution after receiving the letter from Alfred Russel Wallace. And he was he was making a living in science by visiting far off places in the world. Um, and like he was in the Amazon, I believe, and he was in uh, Sumatra and areas like that. He collected exotic birds like the birds of paradise, and so that's how he was making his living. And his life was just full of adventure. He had an amazing mind and made an amazing contribution to science. So often overlooked because Darwin gets all the glory for the theory of evolution, but he was critical. He was really, um, a forerunner in investigating that area, and shared his ideas with Darwin, who got most of the credit. But other books that young people would like, I really enjoy books by Gerald Durrell, and this one here, Birds, Beasts, and Relatives, is one of a series of books that he wrote about collecting and studying the plants and animals on Corfu and in off Greece, an island off Greece there. So a delightful book, and there's actually a television series in the library about his family. Other books, if you're interested in mushrooms, this is a really good book to get started. If you're going to get into collecting and consuming wild mushrooms, you need more than one book, but this is a good book to start. But you'll need several books because no one book really has everything you need to know. And with birds, lots of really great books on birds. This is a new one that's just come out. I don't know if it's in the library yet, but full of beautiful artwork and lots of kind of interesting information about the different birds.
Cool.
There you go.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
All right.
My pleasure.
Mm-hmm.